The nursery smelled like warm milk and fresh blankets, like that smell. It reminded her of home, of simpler days when her biggest worry was whether her little brother had finished his homework. But her brother was gone now, and home was very far away. Stood by the window of Orbital Station Horizon 7, watching the stars spin slowly past. The station floated in deep space, a meeting place for dozens of alien species. Diplomats came here to talk, traders came here to deal, and children came here to be protected. The nursery was the most important room on the entire station. They were a proud species, tall and graceful, with soft fur and large golden eyes. They looked like the cats of Earth, but they walked on two legs and spoke in voices like music. Their children were called cubs, and these cubs were considered sacred. To harm a cub was the worst crime in their culture. Was the only human who worked in the nursery. She had applied for the job 6 months ago after the accident that took her brother. She needed something to do. She needed someone to care for. They had accepted her application, though she knew they did not think much of humans. Fragile, they called her species. Emotional, weak. She did not argue with them. What was the point? The door behind her slid open with a soft hiss. 3 small bodies rushed toward her like furry missiles. She turned just in time to catch Myra, the smallest of the 3 cubs. Myra was only 4 years old in human terms, with silver fur and eyes like 2 tiny moons. She wrapped her arms around his neck and purred loudly. "Good morning, little one," said softly. Came next, bumping against his leg. She was the middle child, shy and quiet, with fur the color of autumn leaves. She did not speak much, but she always stayed close to like a shadow. And then there was. He was the oldest at 6 years, trying very hard to act grown-up. His fur was dark gray, almost black, and he stood with his small chest pushed out. "I am not a baby," announced. "I do not need hugs." Smiled, "Of course not. You are very mature." Nodded seriously. Then, when he thought no one was looking, he leaned against the side and stayed there. This was her life now. These 3 cubs who were not hers, but who had somehow become everything. The morning passed slowly. Fed the cubs their breakfast, a special paste that smelled terrible but that they loved. She helped Myra with her letters. She read a story too. She pretended to lose at a strategy game with, though she suspected he knew she was letting him win. Around midday, the nursery door opened again. This time, it was not a cub who entered. Ambassador was the mother of all 3 children. She was tall, even for a with pure white fur and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. She wore robes of deep blue, the color of her diplomatic rank. When she walked, she made no sound at all. "Mother," Myra ran to her, and bent down to touch her nose to her daughter's forehead. "My little star," murmured, then she looked up at. Their eyes met, bowed her head slightly as she had been taught. "Ambassador." "Human." That was what always called her. Not caretaker, just human, as if she was a category rather than a person. Spent a few minutes with her children, asking about their lessons, checking their fur for tangles. Then she stood and walked to where waited by the window. "They seem healthy," said. "They are. Myra had a small cough last week, but it passed." Nodded. For a moment she was quiet. Then she spoke again, her voice low. "There are rumors of raiders in this sector, the collective." Felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard of the everyone had. They were brutal, violent, and they took hostages for ransom. The more valuable the hostage, the higher the price. And there was nothing more valuable than cubs. "The station is well protected," said carefully. "Yes," his golden eyes studied her. "But if something were to happen, human, I need to know, would you protect my children?" The question hung in the air between them. Thought of her brother. She thought of the day she got the call, the day her world ended. She thought of all the things she would have done differently if she had been there. "Yes," she said, "I would." Made a small sound, something between a laugh and a sigh. You mean well, but you are human. You break too easily. She turned and walked away, her robes flowing behind her like water. Watched her go, she did not argue. What was the point? That evening, after the cubs were asleep, sat alone in the quiet nursery. She held a small locket in her hands, turning it over and over. Inside was a picture of a boy with messy hair and a bright smile. I miss you, she whispered to the picture, every day. The stars outside the window did not answer. They never did. A soft sound made her look up. Was standing in the doorway of the sleeping room, her golden eyes wide. I had a bad dream. Put the locket away and opened her arms. Ran to her, climbing into her lap and pressing her small face against his shoulder. What did you dream about? Asked softly. Monsters, big ones with teeth. There are no monsters here, little one, I promise. But what if they come? Stroked soft fur, feeling the cub's rapid heartbeat slowly calm down. Then I will chase them away. Really? Really? Was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, Mother says humans are weak. Smiled sadly, maybe we are. I do not think so. Looked up at her with complete trust in her eyes. I think you are brave. Did not know what to say to that. So she simply held the cub closer and began to hum an old Korean lullaby, one her own mother had sung to her many years ago. Outside the nursery, the station continued its slow rotation through the stars. Security teams walked their patrols. Diplomats argued in meeting rooms. Engineers checked systems and ran diagnostics. And somewhere in the depths of the station's sensor network, a small ping appeared and then vanished. A glitch, the computer decided. Nothing important. Commander, the head of security, glanced at his screen and saw the notification. He was a reptilian species known for their strength and their cold efficiency. He had fought in 3 wars and had never lost a battle. He dismissed the alert with a flick of his clawed finger. Probably just space debris, he muttered to himself. He was wrong. But he would not find that out until it was too late. In the nursery, finished her lullaby, had fallen asleep in her arms, purring softly, carefully carried the cub back to bed and tucked her in beside her siblings. She stood there for a long moment, watching them sleep. 3 small lives that depended on her, 3 hearts that beat with trust. I will keep you safe, she whispered to them. I promise. She did not know that soon, very soon, she would have to keep that promise. And it would cost her everything. 3 days passed like water through fingers. The station continued its slow dance among the stars, and life went on as normal, but could feel something in the air, something cold and heavy, like the moment before a storm. The cubs noticed nothing. They played their games and ate their meals and fought over toys like children everywhere in the universe. Myra drew pictures with colored lights, built towers out of blocks and knocked them down, practiced his reading, sounding out words with serious concentration. Watched them and smiled, but inside her chest, worry grew like a weed. The rumors about the collective had gotten worse. Every day brought new reports. A supply station attacked, a transport ship captured, hostages taken, ransoms demanded. And still the moved closer. Was walking through the station's main corridor when she heard someone call her name. She turned and saw a familiar face. Was one of the few other humans on Horizon 7. He was an engineer, responsible for keeping the station's systems running. He was tall and thin, with kind eyes and hands that were always stained with machine oil. He had been the first person to welcome when she arrived, and over the months they had become friends. He said, falling into step beside her, "Do you have a minute?" Of course, what is wrong? Looked around nervously. The corridor was busy with aliens of all shapes and sizes, but no one was paying attention to 2 humans. Something feels wrong, he said quietly. I cannot explain it, but I have been working on this station for 5 years. I know when things are not right. What do you mean? Small things, maintenance crews I do not recognize, security codes being changed without proper authorization, encrypted messages that I cannot trace. He ran a hand through his hair. Maybe I am being paranoid, but with the getting closer. Felt her stomach tighten. Have you told anyone? I tried to talk to Commander. He told me to focus on my job and stop imagining problems. His voice was bitter. He does not take humans seriously. None of them do. They walked in silence for a moment, then spoke. Keep investigating, quietly, and if you find anything real, tell me first. Nodded. Be careful. If something is happening, the nursery will be a target. Those cubs are worth more than this entire station. She knew he was right. That was what scared her most. When returned to the nursery, she found an unexpected visitor waiting for her. Elder was the oldest on the station, so ancient that his fur had turned completely silver. He walked with a cane made of polished bone, and his eyes were clouded with age. But behind those clouded eyes, there was a sharp intelligence that missed nothing. "Human," he said as she entered, "come sit with me." Sat down across from him, curious. Elder rarely spoke to anyone, let alone a human caretaker. "I have been watching you," he said slowly, "for many months now." "Watching me, Elder?" "Yes, the way you are with the cubs, the way they respond to you." He tilted his head, studying her. "They love you." Did not know what to say. "I care for them. It is my job." "No," the old shook his head. "Many have had this job before you. They fed the cubs, they cleaned them, they kept them alive, but they did not love them. You do." The cubs were playing in the corner, unaware of the conversation. Myra was trying to teach a song, was pretending not to listen, but his ears kept turning toward the sound. "There is an old saying among my people," Elder continued. "The smallest flame can hold back the darkest night. Do you understand?" "I am not sure." "You will." He rose slowly, leaning on his cane. "When the darkness comes, remember that saying. Remember what you are capable of." He left without another word, his footsteps silent on the metal floor. Sat alone, thinking about flames and darkness and what any of it meant. The next day, everything changed. It started with a message from. He had found something, he said. Something big. He wanted to meet her in the engineering section to explain. Arranged for an assistant to watch the cubs for an hour. She hurried through the station's corridors, her heart beating fast. But when she reached the engineering section, was not there. She searched for 20 minutes before she found him. He was lying in a service corridor, unconscious, blood running from a wound on his head. She dropped to her knees beside him, checking for a pulse. He was alive, but barely. She called for medical help. While she waited, she noticed something clutched in his hand, a small data chip. Whatever he had found, it had almost gotten him killed. Took the chip and hid it in her pocket. She did not know what was on it, but she knew it was important. The medical team arrived and took away. A security officer asked her questions. She answered them carefully, saying nothing about the chip. When she returned to the nursery, her hands were shaking. That evening, Commander made an announcement over the station's communication system. There would be a security drill the next day. All sections would go into temporary lockdown to test the emergency protocols. "Nothing to worry about," his cold voice assured everyone. "Just a routine exercise." But did not believe him, not anymore. She stayed late in the nursery that night, watching the cubs sleep. Myra had curled up in a ball, her tail wrapped around her nose, was sprawled on her back, snoring softly, had positioned himself between his sisters, protective even in dreams. Loved them, she had not meant to. She had come to this job broken and empty, looking for something to fill the hole in her heart. She had not expected to find it. But she had. These 3 small lives were hers now, not by blood but by choice, and she would do anything to protect them. The lights in the nursery flickered once, twice, looked up, frowning. Just a glitch, she told herself, nothing more. But deep down she knew better. She pulled out the data chip had been holding and stared at it. She needed to find out what was on it. She needed to understand what was coming. But before she could do anything, the station's alarms began to wail. The sound was loud and terrible, filling every corner of the nursery. Red emergency lights flashed on the walls. The cubs woke instantly, their eyes wide with fear. Myra's voice trembled. "What is happening?" Did not know, but she could guess. She gathered the cubs close, holding them tight as the alarm continued to scream. "Stay with me," she said firmly. "No matter what happens, stay with me." Through the nursery window, she could see people running through the corridors. Security officers with weapons drawn. Diplomats in their fancy robes, looking lost and scared. And then she heard it, the sound that confirmed her worst fears. Explosions, distant but getting closer. They had come. The drill was not a drill. The Darkness Elder had warned her about was here, and was the only flame standing between it and 3 innocent cubs. She held them and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. "Please," she breathed, "please let me be enough." Outside, the station shook with another explosion, and the lights went out. The darkness lasted only a moment. Then the emergency lights came on, painting everything in shades of red. The alarm continued to scream, and could feel the vibrations of distant explosions through the floor beneath her feet. The cubs were crying now. Myra had her face pressed against chest, her small body shaking with sobs, was frozen with fear, unable to move or speak, was trying to be brave, but tears ran down his furry cheeks. "It is okay," said, though she knew it was a lie. "Everything is going to be okay." Commander's voice crackled over the station's communication system, cutting through the alarm. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We have multiple breaches on decks 7, 9, and 12. All civilians evacuate to emergency pods immediately. Security teams, report to your stations." The voice cut off. A moment later, a new sound filled the corridor outside the nursery. Footsteps, running footsteps. 2 guards burst through the door, their eyes wild with fear. They were young, barely adults, and they held their weapons like they had never used them before. "The ambassador," one of them gasped. "We have to secure the ambassador." Stepped forward. "What about the cubs? You are supposed to protect the nursery." The guards looked at each other. Something passed between them, something did not like. "We will come back," the first guard said. "Stay here, keep the door locked." "Wait." But they were already gone, running down the corridor toward the diplomatic section. The door slid shut behind them, and heard the lock engage automatically. She stood there for a moment, unable to believe what had just happened. The guards had left. They had left 3 sacred cubs with a single human caretaker and run away. Another explosion shook the station, closer this time. The cubs screamed. Forced herself to move. She gathered the children and pulled them into the corner of the room, away from the door and the window. "Listen to me," she said, making her voice as calm as she could. "I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that?" Myra sniffled. "I am scared." "I know, little one. I am scared too. But being brave does not mean not being scared. It means doing what you have to do even when you are scared." Wiped his eyes with the back of his paw. "What are we going to do?" Looked around the nursery. There was an emergency exit in the back, a narrow maintenance shaft that led to the lower decks. She had noticed it on her first day but had never thought she would need it. She went to the panel and opened it. The shaft was dark and tight. An adult would never fit inside. The cubs might if they squeezed, but would not fit either. She could send the cubs through alone. They might find help on the other side. They might be safe. Or they might be lost in the darkness, alone and terrified, waiting for monsters that would eventually find them. No, she could not do that to them. She closed the panel and returned to the cubs. We are going to stay here, she said, together. But the monsters whispered, I will not let them hurt you, I promise. She began to move the furniture. The heavy table went against the door, chairs stacked on top, a bookshelf pushed to block the window. It would not stop anyone for long, but it might slow them down. When she was done, she sat with the cubs in the corner. Myra climbed into her lap, pressed against her left side, sat on her right close enough that she could feel him trembling. Myra looked up at her with those big moon eyes. Tell us a story. A story. In the middle of chaos and death, the cub wanted a story. Almost laughed, almost cried. Instead, she took a deep breath and began. Once upon a time, there was a tiger. She was small for a tiger, and the other animals thought she was weak. They laughed at her and called her names. But the tiger did not care what they said. She knew something they did not. What did she know? Asked, his voice barely a whisper. She knew that being small did not mean being weak. She knew that the heart is more important than the body. And when danger came to the forest, when a great evil threatened all the animals, do you know what happened? Myra shook her head. The big animals ran away. The strong animals hid. But the small tiger stood her ground. She faced the evil alone, and she fought with everything she had. Did she win? Asked. Paused. Outside she could hear new sounds, footsteps, heavy footsteps, and voices speaking in a harsh, ugly language. The we're here. She did not give up, said softly. That is what matters, she did not give up. Through the small window in the door could see shadows moving in the corridor. Large shapes, armored shapes. The footsteps stopped outside the nursery. Someone tried the door. It rattled but held. A voice spoke low and cruel. Cubs inside, break it down. His heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She pulled the cubs closer, wrapping her arms around all three of them. Close your eyes, she whispered. Do not look, think about the tiger, be brave like the tiger. The door shook as something heavy slammed against it. The table moved an inch. Another slam, the table moved more. Myra was crying silently, her tears soaking through shirt, had stopped breathing, had his eyes squeezed shut, his small paws gripping his arms so tight it hurt. The third slam broke the lock. The door flew open, sending furniture crashing across the room. Three figures stepped through the wreckage. They were tall and broad, covered in black armor. Their faces were ugly, their eyes like dead stones. They carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Raiders, the monsters from every nightmare. The one in front, the biggest one, looked around the room until his eyes found the cubs in the corner. He smiled, showing teeth filed to sharp points. Well, he said, what do we have here? Stood up slowly. She positioned herself between the raiders and the cubs, spreading her arms wide to shield them. Do not come any closer, she said. Her voice did not shake. She did not know how, but it did not shake. The lead raider laughed. It was an ugly sound, like stones grinding together. A human. They left a human to guard the sacred cubs. He looked at his companions. The truly have lost their minds. He stepped forward, reaching past toward Myra. Did not think. She grabbed his arm and pushed it away. The raider stopped. His smile faded. Move aside, soft skin, he said. We only want the cubs. You can live if you cooperate. Did not move. Behind her, she could hear the cubs whimpering. No, she said. The raider's eyes narrowed. No. You will not touch them, not while I am standing. For a moment, no one moved. The raider seemed confused, as if he could not understand what was happening. A human, small and weak, was refusing to obey him. Then he laughed again, louder this time. Very well, soft skin, have it your way. He raised his armored fist. Did not close her eyes. She kept them open, fixed on the monster in front of her. Be brave, she whispered to the cubs behind her. Be brave like the tiger. The fist came down. And did not run. The first blow hit in the chest. She heard something crack, felt a pain so sharp it stole her breath. She stumbled backward but did not fall. She could not fall. If she fell, they would take the cubs. The raider, whose name was, stared at her with something like surprise. "Still standing," he said. "Interesting." Behind, Myra screamed. It was a terrible sound, full of fear and confusion. Why was not falling? Why was she not moving away? Coughed and blood came up. Her ribs were broken, she could tell, maybe more than one. The pain was like fire in her chest. But pain was just pain. It could not stop her. "I said no," she whispered. "I meant it." Surprise turned to anger. He was not used to being, especially not by something as small and weak as a human. He grabbed by the shoulder and threw her aside. She hit the wall hard and slid to the ground. Stars exploded behind her eyes. For a moment she could not see anything. But she could hear. She heard walking toward the cubs. She heard Myra crying. Pushed herself up. Her arms were shaking. Her vision was blurred. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. But she got up. Had his hand on, lifting the cub by the arm. Was frozen with terror, unable to make a sound. Threw herself at the raider. She had no weapon, no training, no strength compared to his armored body, but she had her hands and she used them. She clawed at his face, at his eyes, scratching and tearing at anything she could reach. Roared in surprise and pain. He dropped and grabbed, throwing her to the ground. His boot came down on her back, pressing her into the cold metal floor. "Stupid creature," he snarled. "Why do you fight? You cannot win." Could barely breathe. The weight on her back was crushing, but she turned her head and looked at the cubs. They were huddled together, watching her with wide, terrified eyes. "Run," she tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. "Run." They did not run. They could not. Fear had frozen them in place. Lifted his boot and kicked in the side. She rolled across the floor, every part of her body screaming in agony. "Get the cubs," ordered his companions. "We are wasting time." The other two raiders moved forward. One reached for, the other for Myra. Got up. She did not know how. Every bone in her body felt broken. Every breath was like swallowing glass. But she got up, and she put herself between the raiders and the children again. "No," she said. The word was weak, barely a sound, but she said it. The raiders stopped. They looked at, uncertain. "What is wrong with this human?" one of them asked. "Why does she keep getting up?" Walked toward slowly. His face was bleeding from the scratches she had given him. His eyes were full of cold fury. "A good question," he said. "Let us find out." He hit her again, and again, and again. Lost count of the blows. She lost track of which parts of her body still worked and which did not. She fell and she got up. She fell again and she got up again. The cubs were crying, all three of them. Had finally broken down, his brave face crumbling. He was shouting something but could not hear the words. There was blood in her ears. Stood over her, breathing hard. His armor was spattered with her blood. His fists were red. "Why?" he demanded. "Why do you keep fighting? They are not even your children. They are not even your species. Why do you suffer for them?" Lay on the ground, broken in more ways than she could count. She looked up at the monster standing over her, and she thought of her brother. She thought of all the things she had not been able to protect him from, all the ways she had failed. "Not this time." "Because," she whispered, "they are mine." She grabbed his ankle. It was the only part of him she could reach. She held on with everything she had left. "They are mine," she said again, "and you cannot have them." Tried to shake her off, but her grip was like iron. He kicked at her hand, but she did not let go. "Kill her," he ordered. "Kill her now." One of the other raiders raised his weapon. And then the wall exploded. The blast threw everyone to the ground. Smoke and debris filled the air. Through the chaos heard new voices, shouting, commands. "Security team, move in, protect the cubs." Commander burst through the hole in the wall, his massive reptilian body covered in battle armor. Behind him came a squad of soldiers, their weapons blazing. The two raiders went down quickly, caught off guard by the sudden attack, tried to run but was faster. The commander tackled him, bringing them both crashing to the floor. More figures poured into the room, and then heard a voice she recognized. "My children, where are my children?" Ambassador appeared in the doorway. Her beautiful white fur was dirty and matted with blood. Her robes were torn. She had fought her way through the station to reach this room. "Mother," Myra ran to her, followed by Ind. Gathered them in her arms, crying and laughing at the same time. She checked each one frantically, making sure they were unhurt. "They are safe," she breathed. "They are safe." Then she looked up and saw. The human lay on the ground, motionless. Blood pooled around her broken body. Her eyes were closed, her face pale as snow. Stared at her, at the scratches on his face, at the blood on his fists, at the trail of red that showed how many times had fallen and gotten back up. She understood. "Medic," she said, her voice shaking. "We need a medic now." Commander finished restraining and looked over. His cold reptilian eyes widened when he saw. "The human," he said, "she did this. She protected them," whispered. "She protected my children." Broke away from his mother and ran to side. He knelt beside her, his small paws touching her face gently. His voice was tiny, broken. "Please wake up, please. You promised you would not leave us." Did not move. The medics arrived, pushing everyone aside. They worked quickly, their instruments scanning and beeping. One of them looked up with grim eyes. 7 broken bones, internal bleeding, collapsed lung, severe trauma. The medic paused. "I do not know how she is still alive." Looked down at the small human woman who had given everything to protect 3 cubs that were not hers, who had stood against monsters when everyone else had run, who had refused to break, even when breaking was all she had left. "Because she would not give up," said softly. "That is how." They carried away on a stretcher, her blood leaving a trail on the floor. Myra was crying again, reaching for her. Was silent, her eyes empty with shock. Stood frozen, watching until disappeared around the corner. The battle was over, the station was secure. But for 3 small cubs, the world had changed forever. They had seen what a human could do. And they would never forget. 3 weeks had passed since the attack. The station was slowly returning to normal. Workers repaired the damaged sections. Diplomats returned to their meetings. Life went on as it always does. But some things had changed forever. Opened her eyes to bright white light. She blinked, confused. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. The bed beneath her was soft, softer than anything she had ever slept on. She tried to move and gasped as pain shot through her body. Memories came flooding back. The alarm, the raiders, the cubs. "The cubs," she whispered. Her voice was rough, like she had not used it in a long time. "They are safe." Turned her head slowly. Ambassador sat in a chair beside her bed, her golden eyes gentle in a way had never seen before. "You have been asleep for 3 weeks," said. "The doctors were not sure you would wake up." 3 weeks. You had 7 broken bones, internal bleeding, a collapsed lung, and damage to several organs. His voice was quiet. "By all medical understanding, you should have died. The doctors say they have never seen anything like it. A human body, pushed so far past its limits, still fighting to survive." Closed her eyes. She remembered the pain. She remembered falling again and again. She remembered getting up again and again. "The cubs," she said again, "are they really safe?" "They are," stood and walked to the door. She opened it and 3 small bodies burst into the room. Myra reached the bed first, climbing up carefully and pressing her small face against hand. Followed, her quiet eyes bright with tears. Hung back for a moment, trying to be mature, then gave up and threw himself at the bed like his sisters. "You are awake," Myra said. "You are really awake." "I told you," said his voice thick. "I told you she would not leave us." Looked at the three cubs surrounding her, their warm bodies pressed against her sides, and she felt tears running down her own face. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry I scared you." "Do not be sorry," spoke for the first time in weeks, her voice small but clear. "You saved us. You were like the tiger in the story." Laughed though it hurt. "I do not feel very much like a tiger." "You are better than a tiger," Myra said seriously. "Tigers run away sometimes. You did not run away." Watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. After a few minutes, she gently shooed the cubs out of the room, promising they could come back later. Then she returned to her chair beside bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I called your kind fragile," finally said. "I called you weak. I said you would break." "Waited." "I was wrong," bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect among the. "I have lived for many years. I have met thousands of beings from hundreds of species. I thought I understood what strength was, but I did not until I saw you." She looked up, her golden eyes meetings. "You were not strong enough to win. You knew that, but you fought anyway. You let them break your bones, your body, everything physical about you. And still you did not stop. Still you got up. Still you stood between them and my children." His voice cracked. "Why?" Thought about the question. She thought about her brother, about the hole in her heart that had never healed. She thought about three small cubs who had somehow filled that hole just a little. "Because that is what you do," she said simply, "for the ones you love." Was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for my children." The ceremony was held 2 weeks later when was finally strong enough to walk. The entire station gathered in the main hall, a sea of faces from dozens of species. Humans, and many others did not recognize. She stood on the platform, supported by a cane. She was still healing. The doctors said she would be healing for a long time. Some of the damage might never fully go away. She did not care. Commander stood before her, looking uncomfortable. The great reptilian warrior who had dismissed humans as weak, who had ignored the warnings that might have prevented the attack, now had to present an award to the small human woman who had done what his guards could not. "For extraordinary courage in the defense of innocent lives," he read from a scroll, his voice formal. "For refusing to yield in the face of impossible odds. For demonstrating that strength is not measured in size or power, but in the depth of one's heart. Of Earth is hereby awarded the Star of the Guardian, the highest honor of the people." He pinned the medal to her chest. It was a small silver star, simple and beautiful. The crowd applauded, barely heard them. She was looking at the three cubs in the front row, sitting with their mother. Myra was bouncing with excitement, was smiling, really smiling for the first time since the attack, was trying to look dignified, but his tail was wagging. Elder stepped forward to speak. The ancient had to be helped onto the platform, but his voice was still strong. "We measure strength in many ways," he said to the crowd. "In claws and scales, in ships and shields, in weapons and armies. We look at the humans and we see soft skin, weak muscles, short lives. We see a species that should not have survived, that should have been eaten by predators long before they ever reached the stars." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But we forgot something. We forgot the oldest strength. The strength that makes a mother lift a vehicle to save her child. The strength that makes a soldier carry his wounded friend across a battlefield. The strength that makes a small human woman stand against monsters again and again for children who are not her own." He turned to look at. "The humans call it love. We have other names for it, but the name does not matter. What matters is what it makes them do. What matters is that when the alarm sounded, the guards ran. The security forces hesitated. The diplomats hid." His voice rose. "But the humans stayed. The humans stayed, and she shielded the cubs with her own body. She did not have weapons. She did not have armor. She did not have training or strength or any hope of victory. All she had was her heart, and her heart was enough. The silence in the hall was complete. "Remember this," Elder said softly. "Remember what the humans carry inside them, and never ever call them weak again." The ceremony ended. The crowd dispersed, was surrounded by people wanting to thank her, to shake her hand, to tell her how amazing she was. She smiled and nodded and said the right things, but all she really wanted was to go back to the nursery. Found her sitting in her old chair, the cubs asleep around her. Myra was curled in her lap, leaned against her shoulder, had fallen asleep holding her hand. "Commander offered you a position in station security," said quietly. "A high rank, good pay, respect." "I know," I said no. "Why?" Looked down at the sleeping cubs, at their peaceful faces, their soft breathing, their complete trust. "Because this is where I belong," she said. "This is what I am meant to do." Smiled. It was the first real smile had ever seen on her face. "Then this is where you will stay," the ambassador said, "for as long as you want." She left quietly, closing the door behind her. Sat in the silence, surrounded by warmth and love. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance. Ships came and went. Diplomats argued. Traders made deals. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the story was spreading. Travelers told it in spaceport bars. Diplomats mentioned it in meetings. Children heard it as a bedtime tale. The story of the human caretaker, the woman who would not break, the small flame that held back the darkest night. When the alarm sounded, the guards ran. The human stayed. And she always would.